My guest today says he's lived a double life. It's also been a charmed one and a very successful one. His name is a hallmark for success in advertising and theatre. Here to tell us all about it is the man his colleagues call God, Alyque Padamsee. Welcome to the program, Alyque.
With an introduction like that, thank you. It's a very warm and very frightening welcome, you know, to live up to that kind of thing. Yeah.
Not a frightening one to put you off from that reputation that you have. Tell me, how did you get a name like Alyque? It's a most unusual one.
Well, you see, I came from a very large family. My mother had altogether 12 children. Unfortunately, 4 passed away in very early years. And she kept having children year after year. And she was like the old woman in the shoe. She didn't know what to do with them. So she sent them off to a boarding school, which was in Bombay. We lived in Bombay, and we went to a boarding school in Bombay.
Mummy didn't want you at home?
No. She couldn't, because she was pregnant the next... So she went on like this. She could have, I suppose, got a selection of ayahs, but she met an Irish lady called Miss Murphy. Fantastic woman. Really the old school Irish, you know. And Miss Murphy, all the Padamsees have learnt this from her, I think, raising an eyebrow like this, where, you know, we want to put someone in the place, we go, yeah, what can you say? And she ran this boarding school which only had 2 families. There was the Rajpipla family, you know, the state of Rajpipla, and there were the Padamsees. And of course we outnumbered the Rajpipla. So every year another child would be added, and we all went there at ages like 2, 3 or 4 years old. And Miss Murphy had a very clear idea. She didn't understand all these Indian names, you know. She didn't want to hear names that were, you know, Ramesh and Hari, you know. So she would, if it was a Hari, it became Harry. And in my case, she said Alyque. My elder brother was known as Bobby. And each of us got these kind of nicknames, if you like, which you know in school, Karan. A nickname just sticks to you for the rest of your life.
Reveal a secret. What was the original name that Mummy actually gave you?
Roshan.
Roshan?
Yes.
And it's never been used. But
Never
it is your sister's name, isn't it?
Yes, it's also my sister's name.
So she ran short of names while she was having lots and lots of babies.
So. No, I think she was very fascinated by this whole idea of Roshni and light and so on and so forth. So that's really the origin of the name.
Now, you describe it as a wonderful, large, rambling family, but you also lived in an equally wonderful, large, rambling building with a creaky lift and a horseshoe-shaped dining table.
Yeah, well, let me tell you about the creaky lift. Well, the creaky lift was one of those, it was in those days, before Otis and all that, it was called Turner Hall. Don't ask me why such a, you know, a strange name. But Turner Hall had built this lift, I don't know. The building was built, by the way, in the I think 1935, 1936. And for some reason, the button that you pressed to go to the 4th floor, we lived on the 4th floor, the building was built by my father and was called Kulsum Terrace, my mother's name being Kulsum. And it would go off like a pistol shot. You literally press the button, ta! And any visitor who didn't know this would immediately, you know, what's happened? Huh? Oh my God, we're going to crash. Relax, relax, nothing's going to happen. And then it would creak its way up to the 4th floor. Sometimes, I remember as a schoolboy being terrified of this lift, because sometimes it would go above the level. Now, the next level, there was no level, there were those giant wheels on which the wire is pulled up. So I used to have nightmares of this lift going up and crashing into those wheels, and then we being plunged downwards, God knows, 100 feet or something. That was one, and the horseshoe table was very interesting because my mother had seen a movie, I can't remember, it was Henry VIII or something, in which he had this wonderful horseshoe table. Why a horseshoe table? Because it's actually a very practical thing. Being 10 of us, parents at the end of the table, children sitting around in the proper pecking order, and the servitors, as she had seen, you know, would come inside the horseshoe and serve you.
So you didn't have to reach over your shoulder to help yourself to straight in front.
Wonderful. And that's terrible, you know, when you have, you know, the waiters in hotels. Always I was saying, oh, get off my shoulder, will you?
Your mother wasn't just full of clever ideas, she was actually a lady who dominated your life as a child. Later on you referred to as Durga Mata. What was she like?
She was a mixture of very down-to-earth common sense and a real dehati, came really from a small village in Gujarat called Talaja. I was my father's second wife, married him when she was about 16, I think, 16 or 17. But she had that tremendous zid, you know. She was really ziddi. She was stubborn like nobody else. And I write in the book how she, you know, got back one of our buildings from the British
She
colonel.
sat outside the Navy office for a month and a bit until they gave it back.
What? A year she sat every day for 1 year. Finally he said, Mrs. Padamsee, are you going to sit here forever? She said, no, only till you give me back my building. He said, but you've been here 1 year. She used to bring her sandwich box and her knitting and her books and just sit in his reception, because the first time he said, no, we can't give you the building back. Sorry. So she said, well, I'll wait. She said, yes, fine. If you wait, there's no problem. Now, she took that literally, I think very naughtily. And she said, okay, I'll wait. I'll show this guy how I can wait.
And she waited till he wore down and gave the building back.
That's right. Finally said, what is the only way to get rid of you? She said, I'm only here because I want my building. So if I give you back the building, you'll go away? She said, yes. After 1 year, with trembling hands, he signed the papers, the order, give back the building to Mrs. Padamsee. Please, and let me never see you again.
Now, this idyllic childhood that you seem to have had actually came to an end rather dramatically when you fell in love with a divorcee who had 2 children.
Yeah.
How dramatic was the change?
It was very dramatic in the sense that I was a thoroughly spoiled brat. You know, you've heard of the brat pack. Well, I was one of those, really spoiled. I mean, my parents just lavish, particularly my mother, just because I came after 1, 2, 3, 4 girls. Now, you know, in Indian families, 4 girls, another girl, what? Another girl, yet another girl, and then a boy, celebrate, celebrate. So, in that sense, I was very spoiled, and anything I wanted, if I wanted to go to England, RADA, Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, for 2 years and take off time off college, all expenses were paid.
But she didn't spoil you when it came to wanting to marry Pearl.
Then
she put her foot down.
Then came the time when I was about, 21 when I fell in love with Pearl. And I asked my mother, I said, I want to get married. She said, oh, wonderful. I'm glad you're saying it early, because I've got some lovely girls lined up, and they're going to give a nice, large dowry. I said, no. A, I'd never accepted dowry. And, you know, in Miss Murphy's school, we had a very different code to what, you know, many Indian families have.
And B, I found the girl I want to marry.
That's exactly it. I found the girl. So she said, oh, wonderful. Who's that? So I said, Pearl. Now, she knew Pearl because Pearl came for rehearsals almost every day. She loved Pearl because Pearl was a unique person, full of life and always bubbling with vivacity and laughter, bubbling, a real bubbling personality. So she said, Pearl? I said, yeah, thinking, you know, she'd be pleased. She said, never. I said, why not? She's divorced, she's got 2 children. So I said, yes. Mama, I used to call her. This is very French. We used to all call her Mama. So I said, Mama, what's wrong with that? I said, what's wrong with it? And she used to speak with a heavy Gujarati accent. What is wrong with it, Alyque? I will tell you what is wrong with it. It is not correct. And how will you bring up 2 children? You do not have a job. Then suddenly it hit me what she was saying was that if you marry, you will leave the house. Now we had 2 cars, we owned 10 buildings in Bombay.
She was blackmailing you. She was saying everything that you've known and loved will be lost to you if you pursue this woman.
Yes.
And you pursued her.
And no, wait a minute. That's not quite the story. So I didn't know what to do. I was in a bind. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any means of supporting Pearl and the 2 kids or even myself. So I bit on the bullet. I decided to tough it out. The next day, I phoned up my friend Jerson Dacona, who had just moved from journalism to advertising. Said, Jerson, are there any jobs going in what was then J. Walter Thompson, which became HTA? And he said, funny, you should mention that because I'm leaving to join Lintas. So my job's going free. So
you stepped into Jerson's shoes.
I went to there and I did the copy test. And they said, oh, yeah, okay, but you have to start at the bottom. Princely sum of 300 rupees a month.
So you pulled yourself up all the way to the top of Lintas, an agency which you headed for 14 years, literally by your bootstraps.
Well, I wouldn't say, yeah, I suppose in a way, yeah. But I mean, you know, I had a a lot of people think that you can have a career on your own. You can't. Advertising, like theatre, is a very combined business.
But are you
got a good
surprised
team,
by how successful you became in advertising? Because although the nickname God began in theatre, it applied as much to you in advertising as anything else.
Yeah, because they had not seen a chief executive who was a creative man and a good businessman, you know. Usually creative directors who become the managing director, the profits of the company dwindle and then he doesn't pay attention to the right things and
you
so on.
You paid attention to both.
See, I come from a Gujarati family, and that too, we are half Kachchi. Now the Kachchi is no paisa, you know, business is business. And
did some of this business instinct come from Mama?
Came very much from my mother and from my father, who, remember, started off with 50,000 rupees debt and then eventually built 10 buildings and became a very wealthy man.
But you know, you weren't just a great businessman when you were head of Lintras, you were also a great creator of advertisements. I mean, there was the little ad that everyone remembers. But I'm told that the smile on Karen Lunel's face wasn't so much freshness of water as a tot of rum.
Yes, well, not quite. But the reason Karen Lunel wasn't blue instead of being that deliciously pinky brown that she is of course the tot of rum. Because during the only time and the only really good waterfall that we located after a year's search was in Kodi Canal. Now Kodi Canal, in the winter, the waterfall suddenly comes to life. And in the winter, the temperature of that water is about 4 degrees centigrade.
So she was freezing when she was bathing.
Karen was dumped into the water by Kailash Surendranath, whose first film it was. And she would jump about and laugh, and they'd pull her out, and she'd be and we'd give her a tot of rum, rub her briskly with a towel. Are you ready now, Karen? She said, okay, give me another minute. Another tot of rum, rub her briskly, put her back in, again 4 seconds, pull her out. So this is how that wonderful vivacity that Karen has.
It's all alcohol induced.
It's not so much, no, the alcohol could have put her to sleep. It's the cold making her more lively than ever. That's really what it is.
The other lovely story is to do with Lalitaji and the surf ad. I mean, it was one of the best hits of its time. But is it really true that Hindustan Levers rejected the proposal out of hand when you came up with it?
Well, it wasn't the whole of Hindustan Lever, I must be clear. There was one marketing controller. I mean, imagine the word marketing controller. Sounds very Hitlerian. And he said, this is the worst advertising I've ever seen. He was an Englishman, by the way. He was not an Indian. And there's no way we're going to run this. In fact, I think Lintras should pay for the production of this film.
How wrong he turned out to be.
And it was only thanks to a guy who has real, and in advertising I respect a lot of people, but this man I admire, Shunu Sen. A wonderful human being, really. I would say that without any hesitation, and not because he passed the film, Lalitaji, but because he is basically a very, very kind and understanding kind of guy. Anyway, there it was. I said we will run it, and they said no, and then Shunu Sen said compromise. He was the marketing director by that time, and he said, you know, we haven't got any film ready, and we've got the Olympic Games coming up, and we booked time for surf, and they won't change it. It's on Doordarshan long before Star and all the others. Let's do a test. Run it, and then we'll do a test, you know, what we call the DAR, Day After Recall. So they put Lalitaji on, and it had the highest scores of any ad that Levers had produced up to that time.
But it only made it literally by the skin of its teeth.
Literally, 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 literally. But what's interesting on that one is that the other day, I was in some advertising conference, and I said, you know, you've got to impact the emotional retina. Somebody said, sir, what jargon is that? So I said, well, you know, like Lalitaji. He said, oh, yes, yes. So I said, when was the last time you saw Lalitaji? He said, I haven't seen her for a little while, I think about 2-3 years ago. So I went around the table. Someone said 4 years, someone said year and a half, and so on and so forth. I said, gentlemen, friends, you haven't seen Lalitaji for 10 years. And she's still very fresh in your mind.
That's the secret of a good ad, isn't it?
That's right. Surf ki kharidari mein, and everyone says, samajdari hai.
Alec, let's take a break there.
Yeah.
Because Samajhdari in your case extended well beyond just surf and advertising. It went into the world of theatre and turned it pretty well upside down. We'll be back in a couple of moments to talk about the other side of Alyque Padamsee's unique life. Stick with us. Welcome back. My guest is the unique Alyque Padamsee. Alyque, let's talk about the other side of your life, the theatrical side. The world knows you as one of India's greatest theatre directors, but in fact your first play, Taming of the Shrew in '54, was anything but a success.
Yeah, boy, I got slaughtered for that one. You know, I'm in love with Shakespeare, and I thought I had a terrific cast. Jacinta Kuna, whom I think is one of the finest actors in India till today, and Pearl, you know, whom I was shortly to marry. But the critics tore it apart, and you know, I remember the headline, 1 or 2 laughs in the shrew. Though the audiences liked it, but the critics just murdered it. So it's good. In fact, you know, beginning with failure is a very, very learning
It
experience.
gives you the steel to carry on.
Absolutely, if you really are determined.
Except that you hardly needed steel, because all your productions after that had a magic touch. There was Jesus Christ Superstar, which was, I'm right in saying, the first rock musical ever performed in India.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in fact, not only that, but you know, at that time we didn't have these marvelous little body mics, and you know, which they put here or put here. We had the mic, hand mic with a cable, not the cordless one.
Stretching 100 meters?
And I had this fantastic idea of having a big cross in the auditorium, you know, like that, lying in the auditorium, which they walked along. And some of them had to make entries from the back of the auditorium down that cross, trailing 100 feet of cable and picking it up as they went, you know, because it couldn't be lying there. But it was a glorious experience. I've devoted a whole chapter in A Double Life, my book, to just the Jesus Christ Superstar experience during the hippie generation. All my young people, let me tell you, are flying very high. not the older people like Jerson and Keith Stevenson. No, it wasn't spirituality. No. Those were the days of, I'm flying, man.
But that wasn't the only Andrew Lloyd Webber play that you took on. You also took on Evita, and in fact, that I'm right in saying was the biggest theatrical success India's seen.
Yes.
How long did it run for?
Ran for 5 years.
Why did it strike such an incredible chord?
I think, I may be wrong, but I think, 1, it was about politics. 2, it had music. Now, the 2 things that run this country and Hindi movies, Bollywood, is music and our newspapers, which is politics. Politics. We live, eat, breathe, die politics. And music is where we want to be entertained. Now, you bring a combination of the 2 together, and then, unlike the London and the New York and the other productions, my Evita was based really on Mrs. Gandhi. Now, Mrs. Gandhi's emergency had just finished. So to people, all those emergency slogans, and I used them in the play as if they were Evita slogans. So there was a definitely running strong parallel with Mrs. Gandhi's rise to power, powerful woman, you know. Most powerful woman in the world, we build it as, you know. Evita, the most powerful woman in the world, and everyone knew the most powerful woman. India is Indira, and Indira is India. We said Evita is Argentina, and Argentina is Evita.
So the echoes rang through the whole.
Absolutely not. And in Delhi, the best audience for Evita, they clapped at every reference that they knew was really to Mrs. Gandhi. I'm surprised Mrs. Gandhi didn't, you know, send me a polite letter.
But you know, the biggest surprise is that you did, what is it, some 60, 61, 62 odd plays, but you've only done 1 film. Admittedly, Attenborough's Gandhi, but nothing more.
No, because, well, number 1, I didn't expect to be in Gandhi. I just met Attenborough at a cocktail party, and the next day he rings me up and says, Mr. Padamsee, would you like to be my Jinnah in my film Gandhi? I said, yes, I'd love to. When do you want me to come for a screen test? He said, no need for a screen test. I said, no. He said, I know you're an actor. I've heard that you're an actor, and you've been on the stage for many years. If you can fly up to London next week, we've got to have the suits made for Mr. Jinnah. I said, later on, I said, Richard, when I got to know him better, I said, how did you choose me like that? He said, I have a sixth sense, you know. And I said, but what quality? He said, you know, I met you only for 5 minutes at a cocktail party, and you struck me as a very autocratic man. And my Mr. Jinnah, with his monocle, is a very autocratic man, and the way you lift your eyebrow, etc.
Of course, there was another person who had a sixth sense about you, Steven Spielberg, but you turned him down.
Yes, yes. There he was auditioning for, what is it, Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. But the role was awful. I mean, really, after Jinnah, I felt, I mean, obviously the money would have been fantastic.
But you were determined not to lower your standards.
I felt that it wouldn't be, I don't know. But Amrish Puri did it brilliantly.
Your loss was his gain.
Yes, and eating, live monkey brains and stuff. Really, not my cup of tea or not my cup of monkey brains.
Let's talk briefly about your personal life. You've been married 3 times. You have 3 children. You have almost as many stepchildren. Has it been easy to be a good husband, a good ex-husband, a good father, a good stepfather?
No, not only has it not been easy, but I don't think I have been any of those. I don't think you can say good to any of those. Many people say I'm a very good godfather, like, I'm a godfather, say, Kabir Bedi's early career, or Dalip Tahil, or lots of people, Sharon, etc., Shamak Davar. But I don't think really, I must be honest, I don't think, Karan, that I've been a good father. I really haven't given my children enough time.
Is that because you haven't had time, or because something in you stops you showing
No. I show a lot of emotion with my kids. When I'm with them, I can say there's a very good rapport. I'm not the kind of,
So is the problem that you're selfish and self-centered?
Yes, very well put, yes. I would certainly say self-centered. Selfish means that you don't let other people have something. No, that's not my idea. But self-centered is, you are the center of yourself.
Do you regret that?
Yes, and I've tried now in my senior years to correct it by spending more time with my children, spending more time with my wife, and in fact, thanks to Sharon, even when Pearl was alive.
That's your third wife, your present wife.
Sharon Prabhakar is my third wife. Dolly Thakur is second, and Pearl, God bless her, is my first.
I get the feeling, forgive the interruption, that she remains special even though she's no more and didn't stay your wife for very long.
No, yeah, you're right. No, she did stay with my wife for quite a bit, but what Sharon managed to do is to bring all my children and all my, I hate to say it, sound like Bluebeard, wives together. And believe you me, we used to have dinner at the Bombay gym, and people would come there, Alyque? We had a big table, and they're all sitting around. And what is this? I said, this is wonderful. Everyone's come together at last. It wasn't easy.
What a wonderful way to actually enter into the last years of one's life, to have one's whole family together. Alyque Padamsee, a pleasure getting to know you.
Well, lovely to know you. Yeah.